Welcome to Web Development Lesson 7.3. In this video, we're going to explore how to extract information that contains multiple criteria using a filter function that we developed in Lesson 7.2. Once we get the results, we're going to see how we can join the data so we can produce one single output. So let's get to it. So because we deal with data, sometimes it might be necessary to perform a search using multiple key values from our JSON. So let's say we wanted to look for specifically noise complaints in Queens. And there you go. We might want to do something like this. Or perhaps we want to look for, I'm just going to refresh the page again, things that involve illegal parking as a complaint type, or perhaps descriptors that say no access. So we can see here that these particular search criteria involve the AND logical operator and the OR logical operator. And we've actually tackled this in an earlier video where we did exactly that. Our if statement that we used to filter involved using the AND operator for the first search, which was the search by borough and complaint. And then the next one involved the OR operator because we were looking for complaints by a specific descriptor or a complaint type. Now in 7.2, we saw how we can refactor this by creating a filter function. So let's go over to that example. And let me just run the simple one. Let me refresh this. All right, so perhaps we want to filter by a specific zip code. Let's say this one here. All right, so this is a way that we can filter for all complaints in that particular zip code. Now, what we did is that we took advantage of a filter function that we created, where the filter function accepted the data, accepted the particular key in the JSON that we wanted to compare to a particular value. So this information now was passed on to this filter function, where the filter function took the data, placed it in a variable in a parameter called complaints. It took the key in the JSON that we want to compare and placed it in a variable called key, and then took the value and placed it in a parameter called value. Now here's that if statement that we were looking for. So it took that particular JSON from the array, compared its key to the value, and if it did, we stored that particular complaint in a list and we returned the list. And that's how this particular filter function allowed us to kind of shorten, let me not really say shorten the code, reorganize the code in such a way that it looked very simple from this side. So now we want to see, well, how can we handle that same idea, take advantage of this filter function to filter by two complaints? So the answer is actually rather simple. So using the same technique, we can say subdata equals, let's do a filter. Let's pass the data to our filter function, and let's filter by the borough first. So we know that the key in the JSON is called borough, and the value that we want to pass into it is the borough that we're pulling from our HTML. Again, just to kind of review, this text input has an ID of borough, and this text input has an ID of complaint type 1. Now, the reason I had to put complaint type 1 is because we have two text inputs that are requesting the same information. All right, but we're going to handle that one first. And we're going to take this slow, so let's just take these two lines from up here. And even though the filter is saying by borough and complaint, let's just do the borough first, just to make sure that that's working. All right, so let's put in Queens, and we should get all the complaints from Queens. So you can see the filter function works for the borough, but now what we want to do is we want to also filter by complaint. Now in the other example, we used the logical operator AND. In our new example, we're not going to do that directly. We're going to do it like this. Think of it AND as two filters. First, we're going to filter by the boroughs, and then from that subdata, that list of complaints of just Queens, now we're going to do a filter by complaint type. So we're simply going to do subdata equals filter. So at this time, we're not going to pass in the original data. We're going to pass in the subdata that was just produced here. And we're going to do complaint type. And because that's the key in the JSON that we're looking for. And now let's pass in that value, which is this complaint type. And that's pretty much it. All right, so let's do Queens, and let's do noise residential. And there we go. So notice the number of results is a lot less. Earlier when we had complaints from Queens, it was up around 227, I believe it was. Now if we do a filter by Queens and noise residential, we only got 39. So the filter is working. So again, we were able to accomplish an AND operation by simply doing a filter on the filter, which essentially is, we want to get this information that also now satisfies this information. So how can we handle the OR operator? So similarly, let's take it step by step. Let's demonstrate that we can filter by the first criteria, which is the descriptor. So we're going to say filter data. We're going to start off with the original. Then let's choose the key of descriptor that we're going to compare each element with or from. And then lastly, descriptor, which is what that key is going to have to equal to. Let's go ahead and copy this over here. And that should be enough. Enough for us at least to test out the idea of the descriptor. So let's say we wanted to deal with, just because I've worked with the data, I know there's a descriptor that talks about no access. So again, we got about 70 results of complaints that talked about not being able to access, usually involving a blocked driveway. Now, sometimes, if you think about blocked driveway, that's illegal parking. So it might be interesting for us to look for all complaints that have no access or illegal parking. So we're going to have to treat this a little bit differently than we did the AND, because the AND, we filtered on the filter data. In this case, really what we're doing is we're doing two different filters and just combining the results. So for that, I'm actually going to create two separate variables. So let's say let subdata1, which will be the filter on just the descriptor. And then I'm going to do another filter, and I'm going to call it subdata2, which is also going to be on the original data. Because again, the OR doesn't depend on the other one. So again, we're doing two different filters, and we're simply going to join the results. And this will be complaint type for the key value. Sorry, I got lost in thought there for a second. And then complaint type for the value. So now we got two different results. And in order for us to join them, arrays have this ability called concat, which does exactly that. It allows you to concatenate two separate data arrays as one. So I'm going to say concat subdata2. And this will serve to join both these filters as one. So we're not matching descriptors and complaint types. That's what this is doing up here, which is why we did the filter on the subdata from the previous filter. This one's doing a filter where we're excuse me, where we're simply joining two different sets as part of our output. So let's go back and refresh that. All right, so we're looking for complaint types that involve illegal parking or ones that talk about no access. So notice we got a lot we got a lot more now. We got 276. So apparently there's a lot of illegal parking. Not all of them result in blocked driveways. What you will notice too, because we joined the two sets, all the first complaints are about the no access, and then the ones towards the back are the ones about the illegal parking. Again, if you kind of feel like, well, it'd be kind of nice to be able to sort this. Well, guess what? There is a sort function in an array. So I'm going to leave that up to you as an exploration as to how you could reorganize these joint filters. All right, so let's go back to our presentation and let's review what we've done. So in this video, we saw we could use our filter function that was developed in lesson 7.2 to perform extraction of information that involved logical AND operators and logical OR operators, except that we didn't actually use the AND and OR operators. What we did is that we used the filter multiple times to replicate the notion of an and the concept of an OR. We also learned how we can join arrays using the concat function. So hopefully you're feeling more empowered about how you can produce more complex searches in your data set, and enjoy.